Hi everyone, I am Rebecca from ChemKnits, and today we are going to revisit my favorite triangle color mixing exercise using Wilton Colorite food coloring. In the past, we took a look at this using pink, base blue, and base yellow, and today we're going to swap our red out for the other primary red, base crimson. Now, the Colorite base crimson is just red number 40, where the pink is just red number 3. And so I'm curious how the triangle might be similar and different to what we did previously. I would like to give a huge shout out and thank you to today's Dyepot Weekly Lab partner, Deb. Deb, thank you so much for supporting this video. To dye yarn with food coloring, you need to make sure you have the right materials on hand. You need artificial food coloring, so things like blue 1, yellow 5, yellow 6, red 3, red 40, those all work really, really great. You need to make sure you pick the right yarn. Wool, alpaca, silk, other protein-based fibers work well. You cannot dye synthetics like acrylic or polyester, or plant-based fibers like cotton and linen with food coloring, unfortunately. So make sure you pick the right yarn. After that, you need heat and acid. And if you combine those all together, you can dye yarn with kitchen-safe equipment. What are we waiting for? Let's go dye our yarn. Just like last time, we are going to use Wool to Dye Force Crazy 8. This 8-ply DK weight yarn is really, really awesome, and it's 100% superwash merino. This is our original plan, had a little bit of water damage that I repaired, but the concept is the same. We're gonna have yellow, and instead of pink, we'll have crimson and blue. Fill out this triangle and see how these colors relate to one another. We will have a total of 4 drops of the Colorite system per 20 grams of yarn. So if you want to scale up any of the colors that we create today, just multiply everything by 5, so you have a total of 20 drops per 100 grams. You might even want to do a little bit more to increase the pigmentation, but ultimately that is up to you. Remember that base crimson is just red number 40, base yellow is just yellow number 5, and then base blue is blue number 1. I set up my 15 cups onto the counter and added 1 cup of warm tap water to each of the cups. Next, I followed her recipe and started adding the drops in. Now, one side of our triangle, the side that is the yellow and the blue, should be identical to that side when we used the base pink instead of the base crimson. So the red 3 versus the red 40 that we are using here today. And I intend to lay out this triangle as a diamond later on, so that way we can really compare the pink versus the crimson and how that all looks together. Which gets me thinking about maybe trying to turn our triangle into some kind of hexagon. I don't know. I have ideas, but I mixed up all of the colors and now we'll check back in. There is not a lot that I can tell from these colors straight away. It does seem like the red has a bigger impact this time, but the blue also does. So we'll be able to tell more once we start adding the yarn into the container. Because right now it does seem like the blue is really dominating, but this color feels more reddish. There's no doubt and no question that the red has a bigger impact this time. Red 40 is much more concentrated, and it is a deeper crimson color than the red 3, which is that hot pink. Let's go and add our mini skeins of yarn to these containers. I had pre-soaked the yarn for a couple of hours, but then I did pop it through my spin dryer quickly, so that way I could remove a lot of the liquid. It's 300 grams of yarn total, so that is just a lot to hold on to and squeeze at once. But now I am just quickly adding these to the containers. We have no acid in here yet, but I was curious really about this balance, and I would say this is a really nice orange right there. Orange with food coloring is hard because there is a primary that is an orange. And so I am not sure if this whole exercise is something that would be worth doing with using orange instead of the yellow. Just because you would mix just vastly different kinds of greens and things like that. So of all the primary colors of food coloring, and the reason why that yellow 6, that orange, I'm considering it a primary, is because it is just one food coloring molecule, so it's not a mixture, even though the orange that it is not actually a primary color. If you take enough of this yellow right here, the yellow 5, you can, it does start to look orange once it's more concentrated. That is sort of a relationship that I see with yellows and oranges. But I think that this orange, this is a great pumpkin-y orange. I'm seeing more of a gradient here between the reds and the yellow. Now, this definitely leads more towards the crimson, but while these differences feel very subtle, they do feel more distinct, and that I could easily order them. This purple feels a bit like grape Kool-Aid. I don't remember if I talked about this in the other Color Right video. This color is really pretty. But one reason why you see grape Kool-Aids, they're not super, super bright. Oh, this blue is gorgeous. Grape Kool-Aids are not super, super bright purple. It's because that red 3 doesn't like to hang out in acidic conditions for a long time, and beverages have a lot of acid in them. And so you wouldn't want to see particles sort of crashing out, and that is the reason there. I am wondering, this green is looking a lot more blue to me this time. We will compare. When we lay this out, we will definitely compare the results, and this is sort of a control for consistency. I feel like this feels more teal than what I saw last time. Okay, now for our intermediate colors, this is interesting. We've got a beautiful army green when we've got more yellow. This color is very bluish, and then this is much more of a reddish brown. I think that the fact that these 3 colors in the mixture in the middle feel a little bit more distinct. Maybe this one feels greenish. I think that even though this isn't like a perfect intermediate purple, I think the balance between the red and the blue is better with the crimson. Even like this color here feels more blue than red. This feels more red and blue, and this feels like an average. So I think that that is interesting. Whereas with the yellow and the other colors, I wouldn't consider either of these to be that midpoint average, if that makes sense. Well, I am certainly intrigued to see how this compares with what we saw last time. I mean, this feels like it's a bit more of a blue-green than what I had last time. I'm looking at those colors off camera, but it's still wet. We'll have to see it dry, and there could be some differences. In general, I like these droppers a lot. It feels relatively consistent, but the more drops you use, the greater your consistency will be. Which, yeah, let me chat about that more. Overall, for accuracy, it's better to measure a volume once than multiple little times. But we're not actually measuring out volumes, we're measuring out drops. And depending a bit on how hard I press the vial, it could make a little bit of a difference, which could affect our proportions here. Now, these are marketed at being very reproducible for color. Color mixing is sort of the heart and soul of the Color Right system. And I think that things might average out, whether it's a hard or a soft drop, could average out a bit more if you're doing, say, 20 or 30 drops. But you know, in general, I have found I've been able to reproducibly create colors. But we're only dealing with a total of 4 drops in each jar. And so having a little bit more might make a bigger difference on the proportion of colors. So this ends up being a secondary experiment on the reproducibility. But maybe that's a question and something I should try to explore more in the future. We can make a series of recipes. I diet one day and then a week later, using the same or maybe some same, some different vials, try again, and we can see if the colors feel very, very similar or not. Ooh, this would be fun, I think, to do not just in terms of the hue, but to do something like from 2 drops all the way to like 10 drops on 20 grams. So then we're also looking at the depth of color. Let me know what you think about this experiment and if this is something I should try. Comment below if you want to see me test the reproducibility with Color-Right. It is interesting to me how brown this color feels right here. I am now going to go and add 1 teaspoon of white vinegar to each of these containers. And like we've been doing with all of these swatching type videos, we will let the color slowly absorb over a couple days just at room temperature. So that way then we can come and compare the colors to one another. And I'm going to go ahead and mix everything up again off camera. If we're thinking about sets, these 6 right here go together so well. They feel so much more muted and the colors on the outside feel bright. It is so interesting to me how this feels so navy with 3 drops of blue and 1 drop of crimson. That is just, it's really, really cool how much that crimson really deepens things. And so in some of the others, I mean, here you still feel like, okay, the blue makes a big impact, but I'm really seeing like a V and then a secondary triangle when I look at this. And I just think that that is really, really cool. I have placed lids on and all of these are labeled, so that way I make sure that they can go back in the correct order. Now, I don't remember if I mentioned this earlier, but everything we're using today is food safe, so I'm comfortable using dishes I might otherwise use for food. And in order to dye yarn with food coloring, you do need a protein-based yarn. This won't work on cotton or acrylic. And even if I said this at the beginning, it's worth saying again and shouting from the rooftops because these things are the place where people are most likely to run into trouble. But anyway, I will now see you in a couple days. It is now Saturday morning, so I don't remember which day I set this up, but it's probably been about a week. Let's remove the lids to take a look at the yarn. Here are all of the colors. And I really feel what I said today. We've got this outer V of brights, and then we've got all these more muted tones in the middle. Like this feels very navy. This is a very like marine blue. This is an evergreen green. This looks pretty brown. And this, I mean, it's purplish, but it's also very like muted and more mauve, which is cool, but also surprising given how bright the 2 on either end are. But as you can see, our water in all these cases is clear. There's a little bit of pigment around the edge in some of the colors, but we knew that the yellow and the blue would clear. So now we are gonna get ready to steam set these colors. And since everything is food safe, I am comfortable using my microwave. Now, you can microwave acid dyes. I have made the personal decision to keep my microwave food only, and maybe someday I will get a dedicated microwave to use for yarn dyeing. But for now, ooh, look at that breaking. Oh my gosh, this is so cool. Okay, so this had 2 drops of the crimson, 1 yellow, 1 blue. I see blue, I see green, I see red. Like this has everything in it. It is so, so cool. But anyway, I will be adding a zip tie to the yarn so that way I can keep things together, and then it'll make it easier to wash and not get tangles. And then I will be covering my bowl with this silicone cover so that way everything's washable and reusable. And I'm going to microwave it on high using 2-minute increments for a total of 3 or 4 minutes total. The goal with the microwaving is to get the yarn hot, but you want to make sure that it's still wet, and as soon as things are hot to touch, then I stop. You don't want to risk things drying out and getting burned. And so that is just why I like to do these increments, because it gives me control to check in, and then I can remove things from the microwave. I am fortunate, I have never seen any yarn burn, but I do know people who have. So I try to be very, very careful with all of that. This color is real, it's interesting how brown it is. Oh man, and this is definitely purplish. It feels very grape, but it feels like muted and gray. And so I'm really, really glad we did this exercise with the crimson just to show that difference. Since the water is clear, I'm not worried about color transfer. This bowl will be a tiny bit full, so it might need a little bit longer. The previous bowl will need a little bit less time just because there was less yarn in there, so it won't take as long to heat up. Normally, if there was a color I was going to worry about transfer onto, it would be the yellow. But again, everything is clear, so I feel okay keeping them together. But if I was worried about bleeding or color transfer, then I just might set the yellow separate from a lot of these other colors. I really, really like this food coloring system, and it's so easy to mix and dissolve, and it is one of my favorites. If you want to learn more about the Color-Right system, I will have some affiliate links for it down in the video description. Sometimes Amazon has it on sale. Otherwise, you can often find it in person with coupons at big box retailers like Michael's and Joann's. This is so pretty. The blue, the 3 drops blue with 1 drop of crimson is very, very navy to me. Honestly, this color looks a little bit like blue McCormick, which is definitely deeper. Probably not the right proportion, but the blue McCormick isn't the just blue one. That would be the neon blue in the McCormick line. But anyway, I'm gonna go heat set this. It is important to note and pay attention the way different colors mix together, which is a big reason why this particular exercise is so helpful. Which is why I still want with as the dyes to repeat the exercise using a cyan, magenta, yellow type colorway to compare to that red, yellow, blue that we did before. But with different brands, the relative amounts of the different colors in these primaries can vary. So if you're switching dye brands, the exercise could be worthwhile doing. Or even within one brand, like 2 different yellows. So say for Jacquard, bright yellow and sun yellow could be really different in their potency, in addition to being slightly different in the hue that they provide. Long story short, I think that this is useful for many reasons. There's a little bit that might feel repetitive as I try this with slightly different colors or maybe slightly different brands, but as a jumping off point for mixing my own colors, I'm finding this to be extraordinarily helpful, and I wish that I had done this years and years ago. And so I absolutely plan to be doing this more going forward. I still absolutely love pre-mixed colors, but I've sort of made a choice that I want to limit with acid dyes, the dye stocks that I have on hand. And when it comes to Color-Right, I really enjoy the mixing potential. So I'm finding this to be so, so helpful for me to actually get closer to the hues I want going forward. Even if I'm not planning to make swatch cards of these colors, just having the video as a reference for these mixed colors compared to the primaries is really, 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 really helpful. Now that we have microwaved all the colors, it might seem short to microwave something for about 4 minutes compared to steam setting for 20 to 30, but things will remain hot for a while, so you get that additional heat as things slowly cool down. And I will let them cool completely before we go and wash it. As for these containers, I will rinse them out. I actually keep these as a food safe set, completely separate from the ones that I might use as acid dyes. So that way we have them on hand in case we want to play around with this in the future using some other types of food coloring. Are there any other brands you would like to see me play with? Let me know down in the comments below. Just keep in mind though, if I'm going to do something like McCormick's, I might not have the actual ingredients of each individual color. Oh, I guess I might if I have big bottles, but some of them just have the ingredients like in total on the box, and so some of them, the more quote primary colors might actually be mixtures, versus with this Color Right set, I knew each of these colors is a primary. So today we were looking at just blue 1, yellow 5, and red 40. Let's wash these mini skeins. So we've got 15 mini skeins, it's about 300 grams here. Oh, this blue is gorgeous. And we are not seeing any color bleeding, which is awesome. I am going to add a little bit of some clear dish soap. Soap isn't always necessary for washing the yarn, but I like to always include it in my videos, so that way you can see that we aren't having any color coming out of the yarn, even with soap. I think that that's a handy thing to just show. There are certainly cases where I think soap is definitely like warranted and needed, but I think you can get away with like a little bit of wool wash or something. The soap isn't completely necessary. But anyway, I am going to rinse out the soap, put the yarn through my spin dryer, and then hang it up to dry so we can come back and look at our dry triangle. Blue 1, yellow 5, and red 40. This time we're really looking at a red, yellow, blue versus, well, I guess maybe more a red, yellow, cyan versus a yellow, cyan, and magenta. That red 40 is a lot more of a true red. This time the secondary colors really do feel a bit more like midpoints. The purple is very, very grape Kool-Aid kind of color, but the orange, maybe it's not halfway in between our red and yellow, but it is a legit orange versus feeling as red as the one did when we were playing with the pinks. And the green seems like a fair midpoint. I'll add the 3 final colors in a moment, but of them, the red is definitely feeling stronger than the blue to me, especially if you compare these two. This doesn't necessarily feel that much more orange, but it does feel paler in the total amount of color than what we see from that red. Going straight to black and white. It's really, really interesting the way these pigments combine, because there was the same amount of color everywhere. Look how much darker those 3 really look when neither one of these does. That is interesting. Of course, there's different ways to go black and white based on hue, and so it depends on whatever this auto is doing. But when we look at the actual colors, it does feel like those 3 are a lot deeper. The balance of colors is not perfect between our blue, red, and yellow. We see green on the 2, so this was 2 drops blue, 1 yellow, 1 red, 2 yellow, and 2 red, so these were the combination of all 3. But unlike some of the other times we've tried this triangle exercise, with the 3 middle, we have one that is absolutely more red, one that is absolutely more blue, and one that is absolutely more yellow. And so that is cool, but it's just odd to me that this inner triangle feels so much more muted than the outside. Something about the combination of the red and blue really does deepen things up a bit. So yeah, that's just interesting to me. It stands to reason why you would have both the pink and the red for mixing the perfect icing color. And let's take a look at our triangle. Let's turn this, I guess, into some kind of diamond. All right, this is so cool. I didn't want to untwist the other minis, which is actually helpful for keeping things separate, but here is what we can mix with 4 primaries. We've got our yellow 5, our blue 1, our red 40, and then our red number 3, which is this hot pink. The red 3 and blue gives us a lot more brights, both with our oranges and with our blues. The greens actually reproduced really well. At the time when we were mixing, I thought that this seemed a little bit too blue, but the color feels pretty darn equivalent. Maybe it's a hair more blue than what I see here, but it is pretty close. It's within like some error for having like different, some tonal variation within the minis, but I would say the colors are overall fairly reproducible. One of my favorite colors that we mixed today is this blue. That was 3 drops of blue, 1 of crimson. It's very much a navy, and I think I mentioned it feels a lot like McCormick's blue, whereas the McCormick's neon blue is a lot more like this blue right here. So I think that this also shows something that I had in my head already. The base pink I like better for color mixing than the base crimson, but that depends on the kind of color that you want to achieve. But if you want brights, then without question I would go for the pink, but that crimson can really help deepen things with mixing, especially when you combine it with blue. So I'm happy. The one other note is that the red 40, that base crimson, does not strike nearly as fast as red number 3. This is why, if you're looking at beverages, you would only have our triangle that we did today. You never see any pinks or purples that are as bright as the red 3 because those colors crash out of solution if they're a little acidic, and any kind of punch or beverage like that is very acidic. So if you're going to get a pink, it's not going to be nearly as electric as what we see up there. Man, I am just so happy with this range of colors. And really, only dealing with 4 drops of food coloring and mixing it in all these different combinations, the possibilities, there are so many different colors. We've got, what, 15 plus another 10? We have 25 colors here, just using 4 different colors of food coloring. And so imagine how many more colors you can create if you bring in the base orange, the brown, the red, and the black. Some of this we've seen because we've done a 1-to-1 ratio of all the different color combinations, but we haven't sort of explored more variation in the mixing. And you could do so much with this kit, and I find it so easy to mix and reuse because the drops are already in liquid form. They dissolve super easily. I really like this one. Don't get me wrong, I love using commercial acid dyes. I love the colors, those mix beautifully. But when you're starting in powder form, there's a little bit more work you have to do to get started. If you've already got your dye stocks mixed, then you can go ahead and proceed with your color mixing. But if you don't have them mixed yet, you're not really quite ready to hit the ground running, and here we are. And so that's one reason why I will always love food coloring. I never thought I wanted a swatch book, but I'm starting to want a swatch book. I really am. I'm starting to feel like that's something that could be really beneficial to have. But of course, I know at this point I know I can reference these pictures, and so these videos are a reference in of themselves. But yeah, maybe I want to start having a swatch book of different colors so that way I can pull them and look at them next to one another to get a sense of how they work together. Oh, but that sounds like a lot of work. Do you guys keep swatch notebooks of different colors? If so, let me know the way you organize it down in the comments below. While twisting these colors up, I was reflecting a little bit, thinking about how some of these colors really felt more like they were a mixture of some of these primaries with black and brown. And of course, the black and brown are combinations of the 5 primary colors. The only one that we don't have in play here between this and then the other sample, which is now completely off camera, is the yellow number 6, which is an orange. But the black and brown are just a combination of those same 5 ingredients. And some of them might predominantly be the 3 that we were looking at here today. And so, yeah, color theory is still not something I am great with because, you know, why is the purple so deep? What makes it feel so much darker than the rest? I don't really know. All I know is that this is a lot of fun and I'm really, really glad I did this experiment. So if you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to the ChemKnits Tutorials YouTube channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss another video. Are there any other colors that you would like me to mix together from these 8 colors in the Color-Right food coloring system? Or should I move on to a different brand of food coloring and say, bring out the McCormick's colors, or, which actually I don't think I have all of them anymore, but so maybe I'd have to buy them. But if there's another brand like this you would like me to investigate, please let me know down in the comments below. Deb, thank you so much for being today's lab partner. I really, really hope that you enjoyed this video. If you would like to learn more about the ChemKnits Lab Partner Program, where you can get some shout outs in my videos and yarn dyed in the video, you can find more details in the ChemKnits Creations Etsy shop. You can find links to the listings down in the video description. So Deb, thank you again for being my lab partner today. I definitely want to do this with both some fiber reactive dyes I have. I also want to explore a CMK using commercial acid dyes, maybe also look at the difference between Jacquard and Dharma, and just play around with it, because some of these colors are different and will give slightly different results when mixed. But different brands of acid dyes and food coloring absolutely have dupes for one another. It's just some of the ratios and proportions might be a little different. But I am so inspired and so excited to have done this again, even though I haven't even edited the other video yet. But I think this 2-parter will be a lot of fun, and I hope that you will all really, really enjoy it. If you love my videos, I have a Patreon, so go check it out. It's a great way to support the content here and get some cool exclusive perks like behind the scenes looks, advance notice of shop restocks, and more. There's lots of other perks at the different levels, and you can find a link to the ChemKnits Patreon down in the video description. Thank you so much for watching, everyone.